It is 4:30 a.m. in the morning and I haven't gone to sleep today because at 7 a.m. I have to catch a flight with Finnair on their new Airbus A350 in business class. And it's a 12-hour flight, and the best thing about it is that I booked that ticket for cash for just £700. Personally, I think it's a pretty great price for a one-way business class flight of that duration. And I am gonna talk more about the routing and how to get that kind of price a little bit later on. But for now, let's just focus on the experience and see what Finnair's newest revolutionary business class seat is like. Pretty excited about this, and I hope you decide to join me on this journey. All right, I'm somewhat late. There is only like an hour and 10 minutes left before departure. I guess lounge is off the table. Let's hope I make it to the flight. So today I'm flying from Bangkok to Helsinki, which is the first flight of this booking, and it's scheduled to take around 12 hours. It took me a while to convince the check-in agents that I don't need a visa to transit via Helsinki, so by the time I finally got my boarding pass, I had to actually run to the gate. You can't really tell that from this footage, but I promise that as soon as I put down the camera, I broke into a run. And here's the A350 that's taken us to Helsinki today. Boarding was done by group number, with business class passengers being in group 1. The business class cabin features 8 rows in 1-2-1 layout, and my seat for today is 6L, which is a window seat on the right hand side. The seat is so wide that you may think that it's actually a first class product, but then as you sit down, the relatively small amount of space in front of you reminds you that this is a business class seat. I'll give you a proper seat tour once we're in the air, but for now we got offered pre-departure beverages and I went for the blueberry juice that I was eager to try. During boarding, the chief flight attendant came up to me and we chatted for a couple of minutes. I don't know if this was random or if it was Finnair's way of recognizing oneworld elites on the flight. Boarding was finished surprisingly quickly for an aircraft of this size, and we taxied out for takeoff, which you can actually enjoy from both the window and the tail camera. And I'm gonna stop talking now so that you can do exactly that. Only 20 minutes after takeoff, the crew started serving breakfast, which was gonna be the first and smaller meal of this flight. There were no options for breakfast, so everyone got the same vegetarian quiche along with some fruits and cold cuts. The food was actually surprisingly good. I normally don't like quiches, but this one was very tasty. With breakfast out of the way, it's time to check out the bathroom. It's a typical sized, no frills bathroom, but it looks so clean and so new, and also the natural light from the window adds a very nice touch. And now let me show you around the seat. When you sit down, it actually feels pretty comfortable. I've heard some people complain about the lack of back support, and maybe that becomes an issue once you've spent a bit longer in the seating position, but you can always use one of the pillows for additional back support. The seat is also very private because everyone is walled off, so you can't really see any other people. Well, unless they're walking up and down the aisle. On the right, you have a large console that even has wireless charging, which I found to be extremely useful, not having to deal with any cables. Behind you, there is a small storage compartment, and there is even a USB-C port in it. There is more storage down here with 2 quite deep but narrow compartments, as well as some space for your shoes down here. Overall, I would say that the seat has an adequate amount of storage. It's obviously not as much as you would get, for instance, on the upper deck of the A380, but definitely not insufficient either. Finally, right in front of you, there is the large entertainment screen. I think it's a nice idea to show this timeline with the main events of the flight, but in reality things didn't really align. For instance, we've already had breakfast while the screen says that breakfast is coming up. But overall, the screen is probably the most responsive touchscreen that I've ever seen on an airplane so far. I had no slightest temptation to use the remote. Headphones were also pretty good quality and very comfortable, although didn't have any noise cancellation. One more thing I want to show you before I make the bed is the amenity kit. It is pretty minimalistic, but I actually don't mind it because usually like half of the stuff that comes in those kits I don't even know how to use. And finally, it's time for a nap, which I'm quite looking forward to as I hadn't gone to sleep the night before. Here's what the seat looks like in bed mode. It is quite comfortable to sleep in, but nothing revolutionary compared to other seats. I slept for around 6 hours and woke up before the second and main meal of the flight. This started with a drink service and some cold nuts, followed by most of the meal served on a single tray. We got 2 tiny starters and the main course. In my case, I went for the grilled salmon option for the main course, which was quite tasty and very filling. In fact, the main meal was so filling that I decided to skip the dessert, which was supposed to be served separately. However, here's the full menu in case you're interested. Shortly after the meal was cleared, we started our descent into Helsinki. Somehow, this flight didn't feel like 12 hours at all, but I'll share more of my impressions after landing.
A warm welcome to Helsinki. Please remain seated and keep your safety belt fastened until our captain switches the signs off. When opening an overhead locker, please be careful so that items don't fall out.
So now that I'm back home, I just want to share a few final impressions and also talk about how I booked this flight. Originally, I had kind of low-ish expectations for Finnair, especially in terms of food when I heard that the entire meal is served on one tray. In practice though, the food was delicious, the service was very friendly, and as for the seat, I found it to be as comfortable as any other good business class seat that I've flown in before. I mean, sure, it works differently in terms of its construction because it does not recline, but when it comes to the level of comfort it delivers, it's just good. It's not horrible, it's not amazing, it's just average. But that is my subjective opinion, of course. If you've tried the seat and you feel differently, please let me know in the comments. But personally, I'm not gonna join either the fan club or the hater club of that seat. What also stood out to me though is how modern and polished and sleek everything was. I mean, I have flown on new aircraft and in new cabins before, but with Finnair, it seemed to be kind of on a next level. Maybe because of the small things that they did with the wireless charging on the console or showing the kind of schedule of the flight on the entertainment screen, or how amazing and responsive the entertainment screen itself was. And secondly, it was the efficiency of how quickly the boarding went, and then we arrived 1 hour before schedule, and also the transfer process through Helsinki airport was pretty straightforward. So overall, the flight left me with pretty positive impressions. Finally, let's talk about how I actually booked this flight for such a low price of £705 for business class. By the way, if you do not consider this price to be low, definitely let me know in the comments. So basically, the route I was flying is from Bangkok, Thailand to Antalya, Turkey via Helsinki. I just randomly came across this price when I was checking Google Flights and also noticed that Finnair generally has quite decent one-way business class fares. For example, going to London instead of Antalya would have raised the price to a little bit over £1,100. And that is generally how the airline pricing works, where adding a connection can reduce your price substantially as opposed to flying direct. And in this particular case, you don't actually have to fly all the way into Antalya if you don't need to, because you could have gotten off at Helsinki, or you could have booked a separate flight from Helsinki to wherever you need to go to if it's not too far away. But if you do something like that in the future, just remember that self-connections can be risky, so make sure to build in a good buffer between your flights. But in my case, this was a pretty good deal because I actually needed to go to Antalya, so I booked this flight for a little over £700 and it earned me around 10,000 avios and also 160 tier points. So overall, I do consider this one of the better deals that I've got. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for following along, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.